Right, I'll make a start. I don't think anyone else is going in. I hope I spoke too soon. Hi everybody, my name's Dan. I recently started working at Curve in Leeds as a project manager. I'm from a site building background, really. Some development, some IT support, so quite a varied background. I just thought I'd do a bit of a presentation on the project management side of things that I've been doing at Curve, how to decompose problems and build a site with Drupal. I think often you get asked to build a site and it's difficult to match the requirements with something in Drupal. Even though everyone says you can do anything in Drupal, sometimes it's difficult to decompose the problem and then put it into a site. So I've got a couple of examples and some useful resources that I found along the way. So where do you start analysing the problem? Analysis, information architecture, content strategy, all pretty much similar words for the same kind of thing when you're talking about Drupal. Yeah, so when you're building a site, obviously these are the 5 main things that you want to be looking at: content types, taxonomy, fields, relationship modules, lots of different terminology that's Drupal specific or seems to be Drupal specific. But the best place to start is the analysis of what it is you're trying to do. So breaking a problem down into its components. So, for example, I got asked to build a site for the World Cup, which was a game site, so you could place predictions on matches. So I started out with a spreadsheet which is available to download or take a copy of. I think Plantier did it. I'm just giving a note of that. And it's basically a build spec. Another thing with Drupal is it's really easy to install it and then just start creating content types and adding fields and then taxonomies, adding fields to that, and then before you know it, got lost in what your content types are, what they're supposed to do, what the fields are. And I think having it in a spreadsheet like this, you can see all the fields that you're using in all the content types. Make sure that you're using a good standard for labeling fields, for example. That's something that you see all the time is the convention for field labeling is different between content types, because when you're building one content type, you only see fields that you're using for that. Whereas if you've got it in a big spreadsheet like this, you can see when you're doing it what convention you've used for labeling fields. Kind of goes against some agile principles, or some people would say it would, because the documentation is supposed to be code, or code is documentation, it's documented. But I'd say this is the analysis side of it anyway. So it's worth doing as a discovery phase of what you want to do, so you don't just get stuck in, like I say, just stuck adding fields to content types, all that kind of thing. So yeah, this is free to download from Google Documents. You've got no types on the bottom. All the field types, and then which content types they do. Labels, what they're actually supposed to do. View modes, which I'll get onto in a minute. Obviously, flags, node queues, image styles, menus, all the things that you might use in one sheet. And like I say, when you start thinking about it, when you start putting it into a spreadsheet like this, you will discover things that you will not have thought about well, if you'd dive straight into making the content types. So for the footballing game that I did, as soon as someone said, "Oh, you need to build a game, but we want to do it in Drupal or whatever, because that's what we were using," you think, I'm just going to have to write all this code to build a game. But when I sat down and worked it out, did the analysis, I broke the game down into teams, matches, results, and predictions. So there were 4 content types that I built. So a match would contain 2 teams. A prediction would reference a match, and a result would reference a match. And that's pretty much all there is to a game. Just using some different modules and so yeah. So what I found when I was doing this, when I was looking at content types, how did I decide what was going to be a content type, what would be a taxonomy? Because a lot of times, because Drupal's so flexible, I think it's easy to go down the wrong route, and then only realise when you want to do something more complicated, you've gone down the wrong route, and the relationship between the content types or taxonomies are all a bit of a mess. They don't play with views very nicely. You can't get the information you want, or you end up with a slow site. So many relationships that the queries don't build properly. So as a rule of thumb, when I'm trying to think about a content type, obviously it must have some attributes. There must be something that I need to store in that content type to display it at a later date. The attributes for that content type are unique in that only that content type has that set of attributes. And then obviously there'll be many instances of that content, which is, you're not just going to create a content type which has one piece of content in it, well, rarely anyway. And then we move on to taxonomy. I think this confuses a lot of people because, like I say, you can add fields to taxonomy. So I would say avoid adding too many fields to taxonomy, because then you're just building content types, and you can do it with a relationship rather than categorizing. Taxonomy is the practice and science of classification. So if you're using taxonomy for something other than classifying content, you're probably not using it in the right way, or use it to solve a problem when you should be doing something else. Taxonomy is there for the user, so you've got to accept it might not be perfect. As its classification, you might not be able to perfectly classify everything, and there will be sort of edge cases to everything. Make sure that the taxonomy makes sense to a user. So if taxonomy doesn't make sense to a user, like fruit, for example, if it uses codes or it's using taxonomy to make the site work in a certain way, you're probably not using taxonomy correctly. It's just for classification and keeping a hierarchy of content that's classified in that way. And then obviously we move on to fields. So field, when do I use a field? When you need to record an attribute on a content type. Fields obviously contain different types of data. If you look on the Drupal contrib side, you can get fields that will store any amount of data that you want. Any field that you think you need to store, there will probably be a field out there for it. And they can be reusable across different content types. But if you are using the same field on different content types, when you change the setting in that field, it does affect it across all content types. So, for example, I don't know, entity reference field, you can use a view to lock down which entities that you reference with it. If you set that view, you use that field twice, the view that it uses will be used in both. So, that's an example of that. And obviously, the great thing about Drupal is all the modules. 26,000, I think somebody said. Obviously, not all useful. In fact, some of them are useless, and might even break your site. So when you're selecting modules, choose very carefully what it is when you're looking for them. When you search Contrib or when you go onto the Drupal site, you can search through free text and get, I don't think, particularly good search results on for searching for modules when it comes to functionality. So what I tend to do is go into the Drupal site and then look at the categories of module, and then just literally read through what I think I'm looking for, what it might be categorized in, and go through them, because a lot of them, the names of them are quite obtuse. Like, for example, I used a mapping one called IP geolocation, and I was searching around for ages and I tried open layers, leaflet, the different ones. I always avoided that one because I thought IP geolocation, surely that's getting someone's geolocation with their IP, but it's not. It's a mapping suite. But the name of it's totally wrong. So yeah, go through the categories, have a look what you want, and then give it a go. But when you have selected the module one, try and make sure it is maintained. So look at the last release, look at the commits, how many people, and make sure it has got a maintainer. Check the issue queue. If there's any issues in there that are just not being answered by the maintainer, then I probably just avoid using the module and find something else. Because it's likely to be depreciated or whatever. I mean, as Drupal 8 around the corner as well, a good indicator of whether a module is well maintained, whether it's got an 8 dev version, or what their plans for 8 is. So if they're planning to move it to 8, you know it's going to be a module that's worked on a lot. Some useful modules that I like to use when trying to model data or whatever, or come up with a solution, is views. Obviously, that's in core now anyway. Entity view mode. That's because I don't like display suite. I know a lot of people use it and like it, but personally, I just think it's overcomplicated. It adds too much overhead to the build just for some small things. So if you use entity view mode, you can basically create a content type and then just say when it's viewed in this way, like in a list, I only display these fields. And that helps with views as well, because it plugs into views. So when you build a view, if you've got view modes, when you build your view, you can just pull in the node and then the view mode. You don't have to use fields, which speeds up queries, and because all the nodes are cached anyway. You can pull that straight out, which is quite good practice. It makes the views easier to maintain and manage. Entity reference, which is a really good way of building up relationships between content types. So you can do it many to one to many, many to many, all that kind of thing. Which I use a lot in the football game, which I'll come on to. So that's the end of the brief introduction, because it's supposed to be a practical demonstration. So I'll go through and bring up the content types for. So this was the football game that I got asked to build. And like I said, at the start, I just thought, how am I going to build a game here? So I broke it down into match, prediction, result, team. So if we go to match, I think the Wi-Fi might have died. There we go. So when I mapped it out in the spreadsheet, obviously I need to, a match would contain two teams, which are entity references, which links to a so you can, when you use entity reference, you can just say I'm targeting node type and only allow teams. So that's now that match field is now constrained to only allowing teams to be referenced in it. So you can only create that node type with teams in it. So team's pretty straightforward. It's got a flag on it. It's got a title, bit of a description about the team. Then we've got predictions. So again, prediction reference to match. It's actually set up so that a field can only reference matches that haven't kicked off. So you can create a view that feeds into that. That's a computed field, which I wouldn't normally use, but it's a bit of a rush. It calculates whether you did a winner or a draw, and that kind of thing, and then so the last one is result. So all those other content types can quite happily sit there. Content can be added, but nothing ever happens. So for it to be a game, obviously you need some sort of logic or something to happen, so that you have a player to. You need to know if anyone's scored any points or that sort of thing. So rather than doing it all myself, there's a really good module called user points. It's got two hooks in it, which integrates into rules. So installing user points allows you to allocate points to users. So when you add a result, so yeah, when you add a result, I'm using when content type is added, trigger this rule. It uses a rule to find all the predictions for the match that the result's about. So because of things reference using entity reference fields, when a result is added, it has to contain a match reference. So that when the rule is triggered, pass the match to the rule then gets all the predictions for that match, and then works out which predictions were correct, and then allocates points to those users that have got the correct prediction or whatever. So what I thought was going to be like really complicated and would take a lot of custom code. Actually, I wrote one module which was just some logic to work out whether it was a win or a draw to allocate the points, but the rest of it was all done with pretty core modules really. And And there were modules out there which said they were games, like that would do the same thing, but none of them did it in quite how I wanted to do it. So actually, just sitting down and working out what the problem was, I was able to build it without having to code a lot or get stuck in the release cycle of a module, which may or may not have worked forever. So, yeah. So the modules. One module that I haven't covered there is entity view mode. Yeah, so does anybody use Display Suite a lot? Or what?
It's not very responsive, is it?
In terms of layout, or
Yeah.
I'm not sure actually. I know that a lot of people tend to use it. So, right, as I was saying before, so in this example, this is a site that I built a couple of months ago where we had products that, so they had lots of insurance products, but in different parts of the site, things were displayed differently. And it was just getting a bit of a headache having to build a view and then put all the fields in it, point the site to that view, I don't know, in different parts of the site, like in the sidebar, the product might need to look like this, but then another part of the site, it needs to look the same, but there were different views. I was essentially doing the same thing, but the view was slightly different or whatever. So I came across this module, which is Entity View Mode. So in terms of the insurance products that needed to be displayed, no, that was it. Let's create a custom module, which is an Ajax window. I can find it. I don't know. Strange. Anyway, I'll try and explain as best I can. So let's build a module which, when you clicked on a product, it displayed a modal. So fairly simple, but the information in the modal fields that were in there needs to be a certain set of fields. So if you created the modal in custom code, you would have to use it and then go through and output all those fields. So like code them all up. So like the title field, the description, like print them or whatever. But so using entity view mode, I could just create a view mode for the product, which was called modal. And then in the code, I can just call that. I can just say, oh, I want to just output it as a modal, like with the fields that I've already specified in there. And that also meant that if I wasn't there, and then someone in marketing what's changed, what was output in that modal, it didn't mean me coding it up again. Basically, they could just go into the content type, which is products. So they can say, oh, actually, we need to display this in this modal now, and then they can just say that that's going to be displayed. So it will display in the right area. And like I say, it speeds up views. So if you've got a content type with lots of fields in it, but then you want to show a list with only a few fields, you just create an entity mode called list. It appears in the display like list there, and then just choose the field you want to display when that's in a list, and then when you use the view, so yeah, basically when you set up your view, you use rendered entity and then apply it. Apply this one, and then whatever view mode you set up, it will just output in the view. I was thinking maybe we would build a small site. Does anybody have a site that they're working on, or think actually I would build that as a site, or anybody? Right, I'll choose one then. So, for example, if we were going to start from scratch with a Drupal installation, it might look like this. I didn't want to go into how to install Drupal because I guess everyone installs it in a different way, has it set up working, so you get to this screen. You might not have the admin bar. That's something I've turned on. So, for example, if you were doing,
Can I give an example?
yeah.
Like if it was like a library or a knowledge base or something. This is what I'm trying to create at the moment.
Yeah.
So it's based on taxonomy, and then it displays content associated with that taxonomy.
So this is a site.
Like say for example, it's like types of tree.
Yeah.
But you've got books that refer to it, and websites and videos, and I don't know, different kinds of content.
So
what you want to sort of associate with that type of tree, whatever.
yeah. So what is the actual? What is the site? What's the function of the site? To serve as a knowledge base.
Yeah.
So you have articles, I guess, or
yeah, articles.
so you have. So what is it you're showing? Displaying? So is it articles that are written by people?
Yeah, articles that are written by people, or references to content that's in external websites.
Right. And it's about. so like, how you so what we need to what you're trying to do is decompose a problem. So you want to display articles about a certain subject, or
yeah.
What's the subject?
Different types of building methods.
Right. Does the site exist already? Oh.
Not yet, no.
Right. So,
Sorry.
yeah, but you've already said, oh, I'm going to use taxonomy. So, what made you get to that point where you thought it needs to be back, it needs to be a taxonomy thing?
Because there's a book that states a way of describing. Sorry, I'm not explaining very well. There's already a taxonomy system sort of.
Right, I see. The
Um,
taxonomy already exists in real life.
yeah, it's like a sort of theory of
Yeah.
the way the world can be designed.
So that taxonomy
It's quite a
already.
big sort of taxonomy system.
So you can import that into the site or
Yeah.
the whole thing. So
Yeah.
I mean that's fairly straightforward. So you just need to work out what your content types are and what fields are on those content types. So you'd say, I don't know, if you created a content type. Is it an article or what?
Yeah.
Like something that's written as like professional. Is it? How long is it? Or
Yeah, it'd be pretty long.
so I mean, this is fairly straightforward. So you start by going through the sheet, I guess, but I can't go through that. So, as part of the article, what is it that you want to store and show people?
The author.
So the author.
Yeah.
That's already on there anyway. So that means you can have different types of users, I guess, as well. Users.
Yeah.
So when they ask, so you said that it might be links as well.
Yeah, we just maybe go reading or something.
So, as an example, you think, right, I've got this article content type, people are filling it out. I want to add a link to the bottom. I mean, you could use a free text field, but look on the Drupal website. So rather than just search for link field, I'm sure it'll bring it up. It's quite a popular one. I would go into the, now I know on that article type, I want to add a link, or you know that there's going to be a link on there. So I go to the Drupal website, rather than searching, look at the module categories, just click all, I look at all the categories. Down to content, well, it's one of the most popular. So like, you go down to content because that's what you're looking at, is adding content. So link, does this offer what? Does this module offer what I want? So by sending a custom content field type for links, this module links to be either added as content. So obviously that sounds like what it is that we want. Go to the bottom. Like I said, it's got an 8 dev version, so you know it's really well maintained. Current dev committed this month, so obviously people are working on it all the time, so it's going to be fairly stable. Reports, root file open. So I've decided I'm going to use that module now, so I need to install it. Like I say, I'm not going to talk to installing modules because I'm sure most people know how to do that. Does everyone know how to install a module? Or not? Do we know how to install a module? So I'll just use Drush anyway, so it's quicker. So now I've installed the link module. So have a look at my field, have a look at the edit. That's not there. So, it didn't give me, but if you are modifying fields, because I started with the really basic installation, not the example one. It was like the bare bones one, which I always start off with anyway, because I think if you're new to Drupal and you install the sort of, there's this bare bones installation and there's the other one. I think the other one confuses people, maybe. I think maybe the content types are a bit vague, fields are a bit vague, it doesn't really, it gives you an idea of how it might work, but actually it's probably more confusing, I think. So, we install the link field. So we just go to manage fields. It should be here. Link. Don't put it here. So that's enough to go on anyway. So we've got an article with a body and a link, and we want to like view that on the site somewhere. So if you want it, so from default, Drupal doesn't really have a good way of displaying content on the site. You have to install something else to do it, which is called views. I mean, I guess this talk was aimed at people that are pretty new to Drupal. They don't know what views is, I'm guessing, or users views. So I'll install views. So I'll install the UI. So let's add some content. So by default, Drupal just spits them out at the front. We want to view that content, so we would go to views, create a new view, which might be a list. We'll create a page, create a block as well. So what I'm going to do is I'll leave it all default. I won't bother with the fields or anything. I'll just say it's just basically a list of content as a page and a block. It's got a URLs list, so that's saved. Now that gives me a list of content, which is not much different to what it was before. So that'll be suffice just to show a list of content, but if you want to show different fields, like I say, you might jump straight into changing the fields in views, but I would suggest that you use entity view mode. So you might say, actually, on the left, I want a block, which has just got the titles in. So, like I said, rather than going into a view and creating a list with a view with field in it that's just to the title, I would create an entity view mode. So after it's installed, we go to entity view modes, and then we can see in here. So our content type is a no type. So what we've got at the minute is full content, RSS, and teaser. So you might want to view it in a list differently. So we'd add a view mode, call it list. If you had more content types, you'd be able to select which ones that was available for. So say that a list. So then if you go to structure, content types, manage the fields, manage display, sorry. Now we've got a list there. So in the list, say, right, actually, I just want to view the link field. So say that. And then we go back to the views. In the block now, I've changed it to rendered entity, so the entity, and then I've changed it to list view. So now all the controls, all the fields are now controlled in the content type rather than in the view. I think it makes it a little bit more intuitive. So if we save that, go to blocks. So it's this one here. Let's go online. So now we can see it's the same view, but this one's just outputting links. The link field, not the body field. So yeah, then install. So then you may have got to that point, and then you need to do your taxonomy. So you install the taxonomy module, or category module, or whatever. So what is the vocabulary called? What is the word classifying as?
So it's called practical solutions.
Practical solutions. So what would the what are your taxonomy? What are your categories?
So it's built environment.
Built environment. What about another?
Health and well-being.
So once you've created a taxonomy, obviously you need to tag your articles with those terms. So again, you need to go to content type, manage the fields, and now because we've enabled the taxonomy module, we've got term reference. It was what was the vocabulary? Built environment. Oh no. So obviously now when we look at the content that we previously created, we've got the option to tag it with some of the terms that we've added into the vocabulary search for the built environment. What was the other one? Health and well-being.
Yeah.
So now you've got obviously you've got two articles in there tagged in different different vocabularies. So yeah, I think that's about it. I think that's about as far as I'm going to get today because I'm running out of time. I haven't got really 15 minutes to go to relationships and stuff. As you can see there, like I said, the NCD mode thing. That's it. That's it. So, well, what was the other thing that you wanted to sort of build up?
It's just being used with different kinds of content associated, you know, more content types associated
Yeah.
with the same terms.
So you just build more content types.
Yeah.
Obviously, as I said, be careful on the fields that you choose. With taxonomy as well. Taxonomy is also fieldable. But I would avoid adding too many fields to it because you just start building content types and then it doesn't really make any sense. It's just referencing two pieces of content, not categories. So yeah, but without the other content types.
Yeah.
I mean, have you sat down and decided what
Exactly.
they are?
Everything you've said so far, I'm feeling reassured that I'm doing it the right way.
All right, that's
So
right.
yeah.
So, I mean, I definitely go through that build sheet.
Yeah, I came
Because-
across that a few weeks ago actually.
because-
But
It does lay out all in front of you in one sheet, so the content types are, when you're building one content type, like I did it there, I was just doing it on the fly or whatever. I was just deciding the field labels and the names as I went along, and then at the end of it all, I'd probably look and realise that I use different conventions on all the fields, and none of it really makes sense. So, yeah, anybody got any questions?
say something about reusing fields and where to and where not to reuse fields.
Reuse fields if they're always so. If you're another content type, the settings are going to be the same. So you can reuse fields, and then I've done it and then fall into the trap of like, actually, I want to configure that field differently on that content type, and without creating a new field, you can't do it, I don't think. Oh no, no, I don't think you can. Well, some fields are you can do it, some you can't. So I always avoid not doing it. That makes
It's
sense.
easier to, yeah. Otherwise you have to remember which, well, you have to know beforehand.
I think it warns
Which
you
is it, seven?
if you give you a warning, change this field to change all fields before.
It does say
I'm
that
not sure.
somewhere,
Does it?
but it doesn't stop you from doing it. Do it.
Some you can do it with. I think that's an instance of a field on a content type. You can Pretty sure you can do it. But only on some. Then obviously if you're modifying fields, when you've got data in them, that causes problems anyway. So it's definitely worthwhile going through the sheet at the start. And then if there are any changes, you change it on the sheet as well. So you've got it as a reference point. If you want to add a field, you look at the sheet, you go, this is the way I've labelled these fields. Or this field exists somewhere else, or whatever. So yeah. If anyone wants to link to that field, I'll tweet it out. So I'll put it on the Hangout of the spreadsheet. I didn't create a spreadsheet, I'm not taking credit for that. I think it's like quite a well-used spreadsheet, like Frontier, I think it is, or something. So, anybody else got any questions? Yeah, go on, yeah.
I don't know really well. I just wondered if you'd use entity construction kits and how that relates to using, how it relates to what we said we talked about. Whether to use content types or entity construction kit.
So, entity construction kit allows you to create entities, but unless that entity is, unless there's a behaviour that's different to what you get in a node, I don't think you really need to use it. So, for example, a node is a type of entity. All nodes must have a title. That's the behaviour. If you create your own custom entity, you wouldn't have to have a title. So if the behaviour is different, do it. But if the behaviour is not much different, don't worry about it. Because I got into that thinking, I'm not really creating content here. I'm creating a database. But unless there's some behaviour that I really, really don't want in a node, using nodes, just use them. Otherwise, I think you're adding complexity to it. But everything's an entity now anyway, Drupal, which is quite good. So, modules I would avoid using. Web form, no one uses it, but I'd avoid using it now. It's a headache. Everything you have to have web form specific fields. Because if you use entity form, you just use all the stuff with entity. Like all the it just works. Display suite, but yeah, if you sit down with these and work out what it is you want to display and where you want to display it, a lot of the modules you don't have to use. You can do it all just using a slim set of modules, which is better when it's updated. And another thing I'd avoid is modules that have got lots of dependencies. Are dependent on a lot of other modules. It only takes one link in the chain, and then that's it. It's a good update module and it breaks or whatever. You're waiting on someone else to patch it. So you want the modules as like loosely coupled as possible, so that they're all independent, not relying on each other. Yeah, that's what is it you're thinking about using entity construction kit for?
Well, it's just been suggested to me that I could use it for this thing that I'm building instead of content types. But it might make the theming easier.
But I mean, have you got a front-end developer? Or who's theming it?
Yeah, I mean, might have some help with that.
Yeah. If you use entity view mode, though, you can get whatever you want out of it in that way. So
yeah,
you can set up as many views of, and when you look at the display. So, you know,
I think it's sort of in relation to.
Yeah, so whenever if you had really big content types with lots of fields, you just create lots of view modes. When they're used on different parts of the site, they always output the same fields. And then, so when you're doing your analysis, that's kind of what you're looking at, sort of like objectifying the content types to turn them into like objects. So when it's on this part of the site, it needs to look like that, and it's like its own object or whatever. and then you have to worry about views, fields, sort of relationships.
Makes sense. Because I think it was in relation to actually displaying it, or so if you're displaying it in panels.
Right. Well, yeah, that's plugging into panels as well. Anyway,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's the same thing, yeah. But yeah, it's all down to your analysis. Spend a lot of time on analysis. Like I say, I know a lot of the agile methodologies are people think use that agile, or you don't need documentation, or people use it as an excuse not to use proper analysis or documentation, but it's still definitely required. The more analysis you do at the start, the easier it becomes, especially if, like, say, keep it in a spreadsheet, but because that's Drupal specific. If you get that, you can sit and go through it and build your site, and then anyone else you give that document to can also build the site.
Started doing that actually. I came across it a few weeks ago and I thought, this is going to be good.
Yeah, that is really good.
Yeah.
And it's something you can share with the client as well, to a certain extent.
Yeah.
It's a little bit easier without having to build a site.
It's so good. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's it, I think. Anybody else got any questions?
Sorry, out of curiosity, with that, the build would have to be interesting, but I'm assuming the clients aren't necessarily interested in the fine detail of buttons and everything. So that almost for you internally sort of the sense checks to make sure that you aren't missing any issues which might come up later.
What do you think? Do you think the client's not really interested in the spreadsheet? Kind of?
Well, I just know that I know some clients who think of big messages, they just go, oh god.
Yeah.
Obviously the overall structure is key, but certainly all the bits, bits with flag and all that is useful about that beforehand. But yeah, I'm just curious as to whether the clients sort of, do you think that they see all that?
Well, I wouldn't just send them the spreadsheet and expect them to read it, I guess.
Yeah.
Like I said, more of a conversation. Definitely like to open dialogue so you understand. A lot of clients that we've worked with recently have got some understanding of Drupal already.
Oh, okay.
So it's a bit different.
So they're actually already going through things that are
Yeah, so
stuff that they're a bit concerned about.
yeah. And then so you try and use something like that. So they'll approach and say, we want this. And so you try and say, well, what's your analysis? You don't know what their analysis of doing that is, and if you build what they say they want, it's not right. It's always not right. You have to go through it yourself and do the analysis yourself. But so it depends what your client is. It's useful to explain content types, I think, to clients, definitely, because it gets them thinking about, oh, I haven't thought about that, but that is what I want. So, or like the fields, the links to different types of content. So using things a little bit incorrectly. The more you make the client think, the more you're going to get correct. So I don't think like making things such a hard, but is a bad thing, So that's it. Thanks very much.
Oh, yeah.